beat him off with a dick.
I'll do that.
Ooh.
Make love, not war.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about.
Whoa.
Good God, y'all.
Good God, y'all. What is it good for?
Absolutely nothing.
Say it again. Good God. What is it good for?
That's what I'm talking about.
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Hello, and welcome, friends.
Hello, friends. Hello,
How dare you?
Hello, friends.
How dare you?
Make fun of you?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was doing I don't know. I'm drunk already.
Already? That was quick.
Well, I had one before you came.
So 1.5. That's
These are double IPAs.
That's what we're up to. We're up to 1.5.
Double IPAs. I feel very polluted now.
You should drink my sissy drinks with me.
Oh.
Oh yes. Hello. I drink. This is my pussy drink. Yes, I love it. It's delicious.
Today, I know I'm touting the ribbon coos, but we have this lovely Unveiled Brewing double IPA. Don't know where they're from. Don't really care. It's getting me drunk.
Apparently so.
Yep.
That was like record time. Proud of you.
I've had a lot of the lettuce too.
What?
Oh, and I took a couple gummies.
Oh shit! You're raring to go then.
Let me share with you. You can have a little nibble, a little treat, a little tasty treat for my dad.
Who am I to say no?
It's just a little gummy bear, you know.
Gummy bears are my favorite fruit.
Yeah, they're the best fruit.
My favorite fruit of all the fruits.
Yeah, I mean, you got gummy, then you got sour gummy. That's a good fruit too.
Sour gummy
I like sour.
can't be too sour.
I prefer sour.
prefer sour?
Sour gummy. Actually, if I'm going gummy, my all-time highest level gummy.
Yeah.
Watermelon gummy.
Yeah, those are good.
Yeah. Those are top echelon.
Yeah.
Only a couple companies out there are getting it right. And for those of you out there, I'm looking at you, Sour Patch. You're doing some good watermelon work. Everybody else,
the sour
fucking
watermelons.
Step your game up.
Those sour watermelons they're the real deal, for sure.
They're a good one. The Circle K store brand, if you get them while they're in season, and by that, and by that I mean they haven't sat in that store for fucking 5 months.
That's gummy bear season.
That's in season.
That's in season.
It's like getting Peeps in season. You ever get out of season Peeps?
I know. I don't get in season Peeps. I hate Peeps.
Oh, buddy, put Peeps in the microwave for just a second, and oh.
Oh, no, listen. I have kids, so they got Peeps in their Easter baskets.
Big fan of Peeps.
And then we would microwave them because we'd be
Yeah.
like, you know what these are good for? Microwave.
Yep.
They're good to watch burn in the microwave.
Honestly, just a second in the microwave, it makes it a little bit more gooey.
No.
It's fucking dope.
Stop it.
Oh, it's so good.
Stop.
Put in
No one likes Peeps.
I like Peeps.
No one likes Peeps.
I like Peeps.
You don't like Peeps.
I like Peeps.
You think you like Peeps.
I like Peeps more than I like hard chocolate bunnies.
What's wrong with you?
Because that's a falsity.
That's okay. Good. Good. Good.
I'm gonna
Good.
backpedal on this
Good.
one.
Yeah.
I like it better, and I like the little eggs.
Yeah.
That are the milk balls. The milk,
The malt. They got the malt in
Yeah.
them. Okay.
I don't like those. I don't like Whoppers.
You don't like Whoppers.
Nope,
Okay.
not a fan.
Okay.
All right.
Not my favorite, but
On that
I
rousing,
still like it better than Peeps. I mean, honestly, you could put anything next to a Peep, and I would eat the other thing.
bro. I'm a fan of candy corn too, though.
You're a fucking. I don't know. Must be North Dakota shit.
I don't know what it is. I've always liked it. I'm gonna throw it even one higher, and I'm gonna say highest level candy corn or of the candy, Halloween variety.
Right.
Is candy pumpkins. Fuck the corns. Fuck the harvest corns where they get the little brown layer in them. Ugh. No. Candy pumpkins.
Stop it.
Any mellow cream candy. That's what those are. They're called mellow creams, and they're made with honey.
I mean, I like honey. I don't like candy corn or candy pumpkins.
I've had like allergic reactions to honey candies before in my life because I've eaten too much of them.
Yeah.
That happens too. That's a side effect, everyone.
I mean, how much is too much?
Like, if you eat a bag of a bit of honey, you might like start puffing up a little bit.
How big is the bag?
Like,
Yeah, no, if you eat a bag of any type of candy that big, you're going to have adverse reactions.
No.
100%.
no.
You're going to shit your pants.
Well, that's always expected when you eat a bag of anything.
You're going to shit your pants. You're probably going to vomit.
If the food product that you are consuming
Yeah.
comes in a bag,
Yeah.
you're probably going to shit your pants. That's a solid bet.
When you put that much sugar into your system, your system's
I'm
like,
not saying anything.
your system's like, hey, I'm not equipped to process all this. So what I'm going to do is just send it out to parts of the body where it doesn't belong.
Well, I think
and we're going
even-
to see what's happening.
I think even vegetables that come in a bag make you shit yourself.
What are you talking about? Vegetables that come in a bag? Like a bag of salad?
Like the frozen vegetables
Well, why
where
do
you put them in the
fucking-
microwave and they're the steamer bags.
Why don't you
I
eat
think those make you shit your pants just as much as the candy.
Well, those got all kinds of shit in them. Eat some regular vegetables. Go to the fucking produce section. Ugh. Jesus Christ.
And my failures as an adult. Welcome to Meat Swelts.
Mishwash. Welcome to Mishwash.
I was talking so good.
The book reading.
Yes. Zabukri.
The book reading.
Zabukri. We are reading Patrick
Rothfuss?
Rothfuss. The Name of the Wind.
The Name of the Wind.
And we're on chapter 3? 4.
Chapter 4.
Yeah.
We're on chapter 4. This is a bunch of like short chapters in a row.
Okay.
So
Previously, we met the fuck they call him, the conciliator? No, the
Chronicler.
The chronicler. We met chronicler.
just Chronicler.
And chronicler.
Not the Chronicler.
Just chronicler.
Just Chronicler.
Chronicler, and he's like he takes letters and stuff, and
It's a scribe
he's
of sorts.
Of sorts.
Of sorts.
And he knows how to be robbed.
Yeah, it's been robbed a lot.
Yeah.
This guy,
He
he's
had a
used to
bunch
it.
Bunch of gold hidden on him. He was robbed by very fair bandits, and then he's like progressing towards our hero / whatever the fuck he is.
Barkeep. Innkeep.
Innkeep. God damn it. Let me remember his name. Starts with a C.
Starts with a K.
K. Coates.
Coat. Just coat. Just coat.
And then Rishi. And Coat is recently been identified by a traveler as this other guy. I can't remember that name that he used. Quoth.
Yeah.
Who's like a bickety motherfucking badass. And he probably is this guy because he's like getting this fucking super crazy piece of wood made that he like that the blacksmith has to work with because it's like so hard and shit. Like he has trouble working with it and cutting it. And like I don't remember what he winds up doing to actually like do anything to it. But he said it was like it took a great effort for him to like turn this thing into like just a mounting board.
Right.
And then Quoth puts this fucking dope ass sword up there. And then now we're here.
This is where we're at. We're at chapter 4.
Oh, and before he does like a Willy Wonka fall to like fake the dude out who's like, "Oh, hey, you're Quoth."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh." And then he falls and he's like, "Oh, my knee's bad." And he's like, "Oh, you can't be Quoth."
And then they drugged that guy.
and then they fucked him with that really cool sword.
Then they gave that guy drugs and made him pass out so he wouldn't remember what the fuck happened.
They fucked him with the essence of a sword.
The essence of a sword. It's the essence of a sword.
How did I do?
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I didn't even remember any of that, so I'm glad that you remembered some of it.
I'm gonna tell you everybody this. I am
No one
not,
cares.
Yeah, they do.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
They're having fun with me.
No, yeah.
The two
Continue.
people that watch this have fun with me.
Yeah, no, continue.
They have fun. Your son is having fun with me right now.
Stop. Don't bring him into this. You're turning him against me.
I love you, Mo.
And I don't appreciate
Do
it.
my bidding. Fuck his days up.
I love you. There's nothing you could ever do to ruin my days or my life.
Yeah, there is.
Chapter 4. Halfway. See, I look into that light and then I can't see anything.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. It's not your fault. It's my fault for looking into the light like a fucking idiot. Halfway to New Air. Chronicler walked. Yesterday he had limped, but today there was no part of his feet that didn't hurt, so limping did no good. He had searched for horses in Abbots Ford and Ranish, offering outrageous prices for even the most broken down animals. But in small towns like these, people didn't have horses to spare, especially not with harvest fast approaching. Despite a hard day's walking, he was still on the road when night fell, making the rutted dirt road a stumbling ground of half-seen shapes. After 2 hours of fumbling through the dark, Chronicler saw light flickering through the trees and abandoned any thought of making it to New Air that night, deciding a farmstead's hospitality would be welcome enough. He left the road, blundering through the trees toward the light, but the fire was farther away than he had thought and larger.
Didn't he have a horse?
They stole his horse.
They did steal his horse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, they stole his horse. You forgot that.
I did forget that.
Farther away than he had thought. And larger. It wasn't lamplight from a house or even sparks from a campfire. It was a bonfire roaring in the ruins of an old house, little more than 2 crumbling stone walls. Huddled into the corner those 2 walls made was a man. He wore a heavy hooded cloak, bundled up as if it were full winter and not a mild autumn's evening. Chronicler's hopes rose at the sight of a small cook fire with a pot hanging over it. But as he came close, he caught a foul scent mingling with the wood smoke. It reeked of burning hair and rotting flowers. Chronicler quickly decided that whatever the man was cooking in the iron pot, he wanted none of it. Still, even a place next to a fire was better than curling up by the side of the road. Chronicler stepped into the circle of firelight. I saw your... He stopped as the figure sprang quickly to its feet, a sword held with both hands. No, not a sword, a long, dark cudgel of some sort, too regularly shaped to be a piece of firewood. Chronicler stopped dead in his tracks. I was just looking for a place to sleep, he said quickly, his hands unconsciously clutching at the circle of iron that hung around his neck. I don't want any trouble. I'll leave you to your dinner. He took a step backward. The figure relaxed, and the cudgel dropped to grate metallically against a stone. Charred body of God, what are you doing out here at this time of night? I was headed to New Air and saw your fire. You just followed a strange fire into the woods at night? The hooded figure shook his head. You might as well come here. He motioned Chronicler closer, and the scribe saw he was wearing thick leather gloves. Telu, anyway, have you had bad luck your whole life, or have you been saving it all up for tonight? I don't know who you're waiting for, Chronicler said, taking a step backward, but I'm sure you'd rather do it alone. Shut up and listen, the man said sharply. I don't know how much time we have. He looked down and rubbed at his face. God, I never know how much to tell you people. If you don't believe me, you'll think I'm crazy. If you do believe me, you'll panic and be worse than useless. Looking back up, he saw Chronicler hadn't moved. Get over here, damn you. If you go back out there, you're as good as dead. Chronicler glanced over his shoulder into the dark of the forest. Why? What's out there? The man gave a short, bitter laugh and shook his head in exasperation. Honestly? He ran his hand absent-mindedly through his hair, brushing his hood back in the process. In the firelight, his hair was impossibly red, his eyes a shocking, vibrant green. He looked at Chronicler, sizing him up. Demons, he said. Demons in the shape of big black spiders. Chronicler relaxed. There's no such thing as demons. From his tone, it was obvious he'd said the same thing many, many times before. The red-haired man gave him an incredulous laugh. Well, I guess we can all go home then. He flashed a manic grin at Chronicler. Listen, I'm guessing you're an educated man. I respect that, and for the most part, you're right. His expression went serious. But here and now, tonight, you're wrong. Wrong as wrong can be. You don't want to be on that side of the fire when you figure that out. The flat certainty in the man's voice sent a chill down Chronicler's back. Feeling more than slightly foolish, he stepped delicately around to the other side of the bonfire. The man sized him up quickly. I don't suppose you have any weapons, Chronicler shook his head. It doesn't really matter. A sword wouldn't do much good. He handed Chronicler a heavy piece of firewood. You probably won't be able to hit one, but it's worth a try. They're fast. If one of them gets on you, just fall down. Try to land on it, crush it with your body. Roll on it. If you get a hold of one, throw it into the fire. He drew the hood back over his head, speaking quickly. If you have any extra clothes, put them on. If you have a blanket, you could wrap. He stopped suddenly and looked out across the circle of firelight. Get your back against the wall, he said abruptly, bringing his iron cudgel up with both hands. Chronicler looked past the bonfire. Something dark was moving in the trees. They came into the light, moving low across the ground, black shapes, many-legged and large as cartwheels. One quicker than the rest rushed into the firelight without hesitating, moving with the disturbing, sinuous speed of a scuttling insect. Before Chronicler could raise his piece of firewood, the thing skirted sideways around the bonfire and sprang at him, quick as a cricket. Chronicler threw up his hands just as the black thing struck his face and chest. Its cold, hard legs, this is a little baby one, scrabbled for a hold, and he felt bright stripes of pain across the backs of his arms. Staggering away, the scribe felt his heel snag on the rough ground, and he began to topple over backward, arms flailing wildly. Uh-oh, did our video freeze? It looks pretty frozen. We got frozen video up in this bitch. Check it out. It's frozen video. Stand by. Enhance. Enhance. How we doing?
We're back.
How we living, Biggie Smalls?
We're having curtain issues. We're having technical issues. We're doing all kinds of shit. Fucking bad bitches. Getting money.
Get money, bitches.
Taking my fucking hair down.
We starting over?
No.
Oh, okay.
We'll just cut that shit in.
I don't fucking know. I don't know what happens.
We'll just cut it in.
Cut it in. Guys, we'll fix it in post. I said we'll fix it in post. Like that? I'm working on my, director abilities. And I feel like they just say we'll fix it in post a lot.
You ever watch anybody direct something?
Watch you direct something.
Pretty good at it, actually.
Shut up.
Directed several films.
Shut up. Oh, yeah, you have. I forgot. You're a prominent, not only film star, but director at the same time.
Writer.
Let's see. This dude just got fucked up. Before Chronicler raised a piece of bread, they came to the light, moving across the ground, one quicker than the rest.
Right when he hits him in the chest.
Staggering away, the scribe felt his heel snag as the rough ground, and he began to topple over backward, arms flailing wildly. As he fell, Chronicler caught one last glimpse of the circle of firelight. More of the black things were scuttling out of the dark, their feet beating a quick staccato rhythm against roots and rocks and leaves. On the other side of the fire, the man in the heavy cloak held his iron cudgel ready with both hands. He stood perfectly still, perfectly silent, waiting. Still falling backward with the dark thing on top of him, Chronicler felt a dull, dark explosion on the back of his head. Struck the stone wall behind him. The world slowed, turned blurry, then black. Chronicler opened his eyes to a confusing mass of dark shapes and firelight. His skull throbbed. There were several lines of bright, clear pain crossing the backs of his arms and a dull ache that pulled at his left side every time he drew in a breath. After a long moment of concentration, the world came into a blurry focus. The bundled man sat nearby. He was no longer wearing his gloves, and his heavy cloak hung off his body in loose tatters. But other than that, he seemed unscathed. His hood was up, hiding his face. "You're awake," the man asked curiously. "That's good. You can never be too sure with a head wound." The hood tilted a bit, Can you talk? Do you know where you are? Yes, Chronicler said thickly. It seemed to take far too much effort to make a single word. Even better. Now third time pays for all. Do you think you can stand up and lend me a hand? We need to burn and bury the bodies. Chronicler moved his head a bit and felt suddenly dizzy and nauseous. What happened? I might have broken a couple of your ribs, the man said. One of them was all over you. I didn't have a lot of options. He shrugged. I'm sorry for whatever that's worth. I've already stitched up the cuts on your arms. They should heal up nicely. They're gone? The hood nodded once. The Skrill don't retreat. They're like wasps from a hive. They keep attacking until they die. A horrified look spread over Chronicler's face. There's a hive of these things? Dear God, no. There were just these 5. Still, we have to burn and bury them just to be sure. I already cut the wood we'll need, Ash and Rowan. Chronicler gave a laugh that sounded slightly hysterical, just like the children's song. Let me tell you what to do. Dig a pit that's 10 by 2, Ash and Elm and Rowan too. Yes, indeed, said the bundled man said dryly. You'd be surprised at the sorts of things hidden away in children's songs. But while I don't think we need to dig the entire 10 feet down, I wouldn't refuse a little help. He trailed off meaningfully. Chronicler moved one hand to feel the back of his head gingerly, then looked at his fingers, surprised that they weren't covered in blood. I think I'm fine, he said as he cautiously levered himself up onto one elbow and from there into a sitting position. Is there any... His eyes flickered and he went limp, falling bonelessly backward. His head struck the ground, bounced once, and came to rest, tilted slightly to one side. Coate sat patiently for a few long moments, watching the unconscious man. When there was no movement other than the chest slowly rising and falling, he came stiffly to his feet and knelt at Chronicler's side. Coate lifted one eyelid, then the other, and grunted at what he saw, not seeming particularly surprised. I don't suppose there's any chance of you waking up again, he asked without much hope in his voice. He tapped Chronicler's pale cheek lightly. No chance at. A drop of blood spotted Chronicler's forehead, followed quickly by another. Coate straightened up so that he was no longer leaning over the unconscious man and wiped the blood away as best he could, which wasn't very well, as his hands were covered in blood themselves. Sorry, he said absently. He gave a deep sigh and pushed back his hood. His red hair was matted down against his head, and half his face was smeared with drying blood. Slowly he began to peel away the tattered remains of his cloak. Underneath was a leather blacksmith's apron, wildly scored with cuts. He removed that as well, revealing a plain gray shirt of homespun. Both his shoulders and his left arm were dark and wet with blood. Coate fingered the buttons of his shirt for a moment, then decided against removing it. Climbing gingerly to his feet, he picked up the spade and slowly, painfully, began to dig. Chapter 5.
Fuck!
Chapter 5. Notes.
I didn't see that guy being Coate.
You didn't see what guy being Coate?
I didn't expect the guy, I didn't expect Chronicler to meet Coate like that.
Oh, yeah. That's how they meet, buddy. Fucking, he's out there just fucking slaying demons like he does.
He's sitting there baiting them, too.
Yeah.
That's why it's got that stink.
Yeah. He's laying a trap to fuck some shit up.
Yeah.
It was well past midnight by the time Coate made it back to Newware with Chronicler's limp body slung across his lacerated shoulders.
Limp.
Oh. Yeah. The town's houses and shops were dark and silent, but the Waystone Inn was full of light. Bass stood in the doorway, practically dancing with irritation. When he spotted the approaching figure, he rushed down the street, waving a piece of paper angrily. A note? You sneak out and leave me a note? He hissed angrily. What am I, some dockside whore?
Yeah, Bass, you little bitch.
Coate turned around and shrugged Chronicler's limp body into Bast's arms. I knew you would just argue with me, Bast. Bast held Chronicler easily in front of him. It wasn't even a good note. If you are reading this, I am probably dead. What sort of note is that? You weren't supposed to find it till morning, Coate said tiredly as he began to walk down the street to the inn. Bast looked down at the man he was carrying as if noticing him for the first time. Who is this? He shook him a little, eyeing him curiously before slinging him easily over one shoulder like a burlap sack. Some unlucky sod who happened to be on the road at the wrong time, Coate said dismissively. Don't shake him too much. His head might be on a little loose. What the hell did you sneak off for anyway? Bass demanded as they entered the inn. If you're going to leave a note, it should at least tell me what. Bass' eyes widened as he saw Coat in the light of the inn, pale and streaked with blood and dirt. You can go ahead and worry if you want, Coat said dryly. It's every bit as bad as it looks. You went out hunting for them, didn't you? Bass hissed. Then his eyes widened. No. You kept a piece of the one Carter killed. I can't believe you. You lied to me. To me. Coat sighed as he trudged up the stairs. Are you upset by the lie or the fact that you didn't catch me at it? He asked as he began to climb. Bass sputtered. I'm upset that you thought you couldn't trust me. They let their conversation lapse as they opened one of the many empty rooms on the second floor, undressed chronicler, and tucked him snugly into bed. Coat left the man's satchel and travel sack on the floor nearby. Satchel. That's my satchel. Closing the door to the room behind him, Coat said, I trust you, Bass, but I wanted you safe. I knew you could handle it.
And I knew you were a bitch.
I could have helped Reshi. Bass' tone was injured.
See?
You knew I would have. You can still help Bass, Coat said as he made his way to his room and sat heavily on the edge of his narrow bed. I need some stitching done. He began to unbutton his shirt. I could do it myself, but the tops of my shoulders and my back are hard to reach. Nonsense, Reshi. I'll do it. Coat made a gesture to the door. My supplies are down in the basement. Bass sniffed disdainfully. I will use my own needles, thank you very much. Good, honest bone. None of your nasty, jagged iron things stabbing you like little slivers of hate, he shivered. Stream and stone. It's frightening how primitive you people are. Bass bustled out of the room, leaving the door open behind him.
You people.
You people.
Fast.
Coat slowly removed his shirt, grimacing and sucking his breath.
He's obviously talking about straight people.
I mean, Bass gets around. Bass lays pipe, bro.
Yeah, you're right.
Bass got game.
You're right.
So maybe he's saying Coat's gay.
Coat might be gay. Coat
Or
might be gay.
maybe it's because he's a ginger and this is some anti-gingerish shit happening.
Is this book written by a Brit? They don't
Patrick
like...
Rothfuss is American, I believe.
No. They don't like the Brits. The Brits, they don't like the gingers.
They don't like the gingies? That's how sad.
Don't very anti-ginge.
Coat slowly removed his shirt, grimacing and sucking his breath through his teeth as the dried blood stuck and tugged against the wounds. His face went stoic again as Bass came back into the room with a basin of water and began to clean him off. As the dried blood was washed away, a wild scoring of long, straight cuts became clear. They gaped redly against the innkeeper's fair skin, as if he had been slashed with a barber's razor or a piece of broken glass. There were perhaps a dozen cuts in all, most of them on the tops of his shoulders, a few across his back and along his arms. One started on the top of his head and ran down his scalp to behind his ear. I thought you weren't supposed to bleed, Reshi, Bass said. Bloodless and all that.
What?
Don't believe everything you hear in stories, Bass. They lie to you. Well, you aren't nearly as bad off as I thought, Bass said, wiping his hands clean. Though by all rights, you should have lost a piece of your ear. Were they wounded like the one that attacked Carter? Not that I could see, Coat said. How many were there? 5. 5? Bass said aghast. How many did the other fellow kill? He distracted one of them for a while, Coat said. Coat said generously. And Puan, Reshi, Bass said, shaking his head as he threaded a bone needle with something thinner and finer than gut. You should be dead. You should be dead twice. Coat shrugged. It's not the first time I should be dead, Bass. I'm a fair hand at avoiding it. Bass bent to his work. This will sting a bit, he said, his hands strangely gentle. Honestly, Reshi, I can't see how you've managed to stay alive this long. Coat shrugged again and closed his eyes. Neither do I, Bass, he said. His voice was tired and gray. Hours later, the door to Coat's room cracked open and Bass peered inside. Hearing nothing but slow, measured breathing, the young man walked softly to stand beside the bed and bent over the sleeping man. Bass eyed the color of his cheeks, smelled his breath, and lightly touched his forehead, his wrist, and the hollow of his throat above the heart.
I'm going to start calling this guy Lance Bass.
That's pretty funny.
Gay.
Gay, gay, gay. Then Bass drew a chair alongside the bed and sat, watching his master, listening to him breathe. After a moment, he reached out and brushed the unruly red hair back from his face like a mother would with a sleeping child. Then he began to sing softly, the tune lilting and strange, almost a lullaby. How odd to watch a mortal kindle, then to dwindle day by day, knowing their bright souls are tender and the wind will have its way. Would I could my own fire lend, what does your flickering portend? Bass voice faded until at last he sat motionless, watching the rise and fall of his master's silent breathing through long hours of morning's early dark. Chapter 6. The Price of Remembering. It was early evening of the next day before Chronicler came down the stairs to the common room of the Waystone Inn. Pale and unsteady, he carried his flat leather satchel under one arm.
Satchel.
Coat sat behind the bar.
Don't do that.
You want me to
Nope.
read it like that?
Nope.
Oh, man.
Please no.
Coat sat behind
Please
the bar,
no.
paging
Please
through a
no.
book.
Please no. God, no. Oh, God. Oh.
Oh, that's good.
Can't handle it.
Coat sat behind the bar, paging through a book. Our unintentional guest. How's the head? Chronicler raised a hand to touch the back of his head. Throbs a bit when I move around too quickly, but it's still working. Glad to hear it, Coat said. Is this? Chronicler hesitated, looking around. Are we in Nowhere? Coat nodded. You are. In fact, in the middle of Nowhere. He made a dramatic, sweeping gesture with one hand. Thriving metropolis, home to dozens. Chronicler stared at the red-haired man behind the bar. He leaned against one of the tables for support. God's charred body, he said breathlessly. It really is you, isn't it? The innkeeper looked puzzled. I beg your pardon? I know you're going to deny it, Chronicler said, but what I saw last night... The innkeeper held up a hand, quieting him. Before we discuss the possibility that you've addled your wits and that the crack to your head, tell me, how is the road to Tinyu? What? Chronicler asked, irritated. I wasn't heading to Tinyu. I was, even aside from last night, the road's been pretty rough. I was robbed off by Abbey's Ford, and I've been on foot ever since. But it was all worth it since you're actually here. The scribe glanced at the sword hanging over the bar and drew a deep breath, his expression becoming vaguely anxious. I'm not here to cause trouble, mind you. I'm not here because of the price on your head. He gave a weak smile. Not that I could hope to trouble you. Fine, the innkeeper interrupted as he pulled out a white linen cloth and began to polish the bar. Who are you then? You can call me Chronicler. I didn't ask what I could call you, Coat said. What is your name? Devon Lockhees. Coat stopped polishing the bar and looked up. Lockhees? Are you related to Duke? Coat trailed off, nodding to himself. Yes, of course you are. Not a chronicler, the chronicler. He stared hard at the balding man, looking him up and down. How about that? The great debunker himself. Chronicler relaxed slightly, obviously pleased to have had his reputation precede him. I wasn't trying to be difficult before. I haven't thought of myself as Devon in years. I left that name behind me long ago. He gave the innkeeper a significant look. I expect you know something of that yourself. Coat ignored the unspoken question. I read your book years ago, The Mating Habits of the Common Dracus. Quite the eye-opener for a young man with his head full of stories. Looking down, he began moving the white cloth along the grain of the bar again. I'll admit, I was disappointed to learn that dragons didn't exist. That's a hard lesson for a boy to learn. Chronicler smiled. Honestly, I was a little disappointed myself. I went looking for a legend and found a lizard. A fascinating lizard, but a lizard just the same. And now you're here, Coat said. Have you come to prove that I don't exist? Chronicler laughed nervously. No, you see, we heard a rumor. We? Coat interrupted. I've been traveling with an old friend of yours, Scarpy. Taken you under his wing, has he? Coat said to himself. How about that? Scarpy's apprentice. More of a colleague, really. Coat nodded, still expressionless. I might have guessed he would be the first to find me. Rumor mongers, both of you. Chronicler's smile grew sour, and he swallowed the first words that came to his lips. He struggled for a moment to recapture his calm demeanor. So what can I do for you, Coat? Set aside the clean linen cloth and gave his best innkeeper smile. Something to eat or drink? A room for the night? Chronicler hesitated. I have it all right here. Coat gestured expansively behind the bar. Old wine, smooth and pale, honey mead, dark ale, sweet fruit liquor, plum, cherry, green, apple, blackberry. Coat pointed out the bottles in turn. Come now, surely you must want something. As he spoke, his smile widened, showing too many teeth for a friendly innkeeper's grin. At the same time, his eyes grew cold and hard and angry. Chronicler dropped his gaze. I'd thought that. You thought? Coat said derisively, dropping all pretense of a smile. I very much doubt it. Otherwise, you might have thought, he bit off the word, of how much danger you were putting me in by coming here. Chronicler's face grew red. I'd heard that Quoth was fearless, he said hotly. The innkeeper shrugged. Only priests and fools are fearless, and I have never been on the best terms with God. Chronicler frowned, aware that he was being baited.
Me neither, bro.
Listen, he continued calmly. I was extraordinarily careful. No one except Scarpy knew I was coming. I didn't mention you to anyone. I didn't expect to actually find you. Imagine my relief, Coat said sarcastically. Obviously disheartened, Chronicler spoke. I'll be the first to admit my coming here may have been a mistake, he paused, giving Coat the opportunity to contradict him. Coat didn't. Chronicler gave a small, tight sigh and continued. But what's done is done. Won't you even consider, Coat shook his head. It was a long time ago. Not even 2 years, Chronicler protested. And I'm not what I was, Coat continued without pausing. And what was that exactly? Quoth, he said simply, refusing to be drawn any further into an explanation. Now I'm Coat. I tend to my inn. That means beer is 3 shims and a private room costs copper. He began polishing the bar again with a fierce intensity. As you said, done is done. The stories will take care of themselves. But, Coat looked up, and for a second, Chronicler saw past the anger that lay glittering on the surface of his eyes. For a moment, he saw the pain underneath, raw and bloody, like a wound too deep for healing. Then Coat looked away, and only the anger remained. What could you possibly offer me that is worth the price of remembering? Everyone thinks you're dead. You don't get it, do you? Coat shook his head, struck between amusement and exasperation. That's the whole point. People don't look for you when you're dead. Old enemies don't try to settle scores. People don't come asking you for stories, he said acidly. Chronicler refused to back down. Other people say you're a myth. I am a myth, Coat said easily, making an extravagant gesture. A very special kind of myth that creates itself. The best lies about me are the ones I told. They say you never existed, Chronicler corrected gently. Coat shrugged nonchalantly, his smile fading an imperceptible amount. Sensing weakness, Chronicler continued. Some stories paint you as little more than a red-handed killer. I'm that too. Coat turned to polish the counter behind the bar. He shrugged again, not as easily as before. I've killed men and things that were more than men. Every one of them deserved it. Chronicler shook his head slowly. The stories are saying assassin, not hero. Quoth the arcane and Quoth the king killer are 2 very different men. Coat stopped polishing the bar and turned his back to the room. He nodded at once without looking up. Some are even saying that there's a new Chandrian, a fresh tear in the night. His hair is red as the blood he spills. The important people know the difference, Coat said, as if he were trying to convince himself, but his voice was weary and despairing without conviction. Chronicler gave a small laugh. Certainly, for now. But you of all people should realize how thin the line is between truth and a compelling lie, between history and an entertaining story. Chronicler gave his words a minute to sink in. You know which will win, given time. Coat remained facing the back wall, hands flat on the counter. His head was bowed slightly, as if a great weight had settled onto him. He did not speak. Chronicler took an eager step forward, sensing victory. Some people say that there was a woman. What do they know? Coat's voice cut like a saw through bone. What do they know about what happened? He spoke so softly.
Don't bring the chick up,
that
bro.
Chronicler had to hold his breath to hear.
Never bring the chick up.
They say she. Chronicler's words stuck in his suddenly dry throat as the room grew unnaturally quiet. Coat stood with his back to the room, a stillness in his body, and a terrible silence clenched between his teeth. His right hand, tangled in a clean white cloth, made a slow fist. 8 inches away, a bottle shattered. The smell of strawberries filled the air alongside the sound of splintering glass. A small noise inside, so great a stillness, but it was enough. Enough to break the silence into small, sharp slivers. Chronicler felt himself go cold as he suddenly realized what a dangerous game he was playing. So this is the difference between telling a story and being in one, he thought numbly. The fear. Coat turned. What can any of them know about her? He asked softly. Chronicler's breath stopped when he saw Coat's face. The placid innkeeper's expression was like a shattered mask. Underneath, Coat's expression was haunted. Eyes half in this world, half elsewhere, remembering. Chronicler found himself thinking of a story he had heard. One of the many. The story told of how Quoth had gone looking for his heart's desire. He had to trick a demon to get it, but once it rested in his hand, he was forced to fight an angel to keep it. I believe it, Chronicler found himself thinking. Before it was just a story, but now I can believe it. This is the face of a man who has killed an angel. What can any of them know about me? Coat demanded, a numb anger in his voice. What can they know about any of this? He made a short, fierce gesture that seemed to take in everything. The broken bottle, the bar, the world. Chronicler swallowed against the dryness in his throat. Only what they're told. Tat, 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 tat. Liquor from the broken bottle began to patter in an irregular rhythm onto the floor. Ah, Coat sighed out a long breath. Tat, 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 tat. Clever. You'd use my own best trick against me. You'd hold my story a hostage. I would tell the truth. Nothing but the truth could break me. What is harder than the truth? A sickly, mocking smile flicked across his face. For a long moment, only the gentle tapping of drops against the floor kept the silence at bay. Finally, Coat walked through the doorway behind the bar. Chronicler stood awkwardly in the empty room, unsure whether or not he had been dismissed. A few minutes later, Coat returned with a bucket of soapy water. Without looking in the storyteller's direction, he began to gently, methodically wash his bottles. One at a time, Coat wiped their bottoms clean of the strawberry wine and set them on the bar between himself and Chronicler, as if they might defend him. So you went looking for a myth and found a man, he said without inflection, without looking up. You've heard the stories, and now you want the truth of things. Radiating relief, Chronicler set his satchel down on one of the tables, surprised at the slight tremor in his hands. We got wind of you a while back, just a whisper of a rumor. I didn't really expect. Chronicler paused, suddenly awkward. I thought you would be older. I am, Coat said. Chronicler looked puzzled, but before he could say anything, the innkeeper continued. What brings you into this worthless little corner of the world? An appointment with the Earl of Baden-Britt, Chronicler said, pulling himself up slightly. 3 days from now in Treya. The innkeeper paused mid-polish. You expect to make it to the Earl's Manor in 4 days? He asked quietly. I am behind schedule, Chronicler admitted. My horse was stolen near Abbott's Ford. He glanced out the window at the darkening sky. But I'm willing to lose some sleep. I'll be off in the morning and out of your hair. Well, I wouldn't want to cost you any sleep, Coat said sarcastically, his eyes gone hard again. I can tell the whole thing in one breath. He cleared his throat. I trooped, traveled, loved, lost, trusted, and was betrayed. Write that down and burn it for all the good it will do you. You needn't take it that way, Chronicler said quickly. We can take the whole night if you like, and a few hours in the morning as well. How gracious, Coat snapped. You'll have me tell my story in an evening with no time to collect myself? No time to prepare? His mouth made a thin line. No. Go dally with your Earl. I'll have none of it. Chronicler spoke quietly. If you're certain you'll need... Yes, Coat set a bottle down hard on the bar, hard. It's safe to say I'll need more time than that, and you'll get none of it tonight. A real story takes time to prepare. Chronicler frowned nervously and ran his hands through his hair. I could spend tomorrow collecting your story, he trailed off at the sight of Coat shaking his head. After a pause, he started again, almost talking to himself. If I pick up a horse in Baden, I can give you all day tomorrow, most of the night, and a piece of the following day. He rubbed his forehead. I hate writing at night, but I'll need 3 days, Coat said. I'm quite sure of it. Chronicler blanched. But the Earl. Coat waved a hand dismissively. No one needs 3 days, Chronicler said firmly. I interviewed Orrin Velsider. Orrin Velsider, mind you. He's 80 years old and done 200 years worth of living. 500 if you count the lies. He sought me out, Chronicler said with particular emphasis. He only took 2 days. That's my offer, the innkeeper said simply. I'll do this properly or not at all. Hold on a moment, Chronicler brightened suddenly. I've been thinking about this all backward, he said, shaking his head at his own foolishness. I'll just visit the Earl, then come back. You can have all the time you like then. I could even bring Scarpy back with me. Coe gave Chronicler a look of profound disdain. What gives you the slightest impression that I would be here when you came back, he asked incredulously. For that matter, what makes you think you're free to simply walk out of here, knowing what you know? Chronicler went very still. He swallowed and started again. Are you saying that? The story will take 3 days, Cote interrupted. Starting tomorrow. That is what I'm saying. Chronicler closed his eyes and ran his hand over his face. The Earl would be furious, of course. No telling what it might take to get back in his good graces.
Fuck
Still,
you, Earl.
If that's the only way I can get it, I accept. I'm glad to hear it, the innkeeper relaxed into a half smile. Now come. Is 3 days really so unusual? Chronicler's serious expression returned. 3 days is quite unusual, but then again, some of the self-importance seemed to leak out of him. Then again, he made a gesture, as if to show how useless words were. You are Quoth. The man who called himself Coat looked up from behind his bottles. A full-lipped smile played about his mouth. A spark was kindling behind his eyes. He seemed taller. Yes, I suppose I am, Quoth said, and his voice had iron in it. Bow, chicka, bow, bow.
Fucking hot.
It's
This
hot.
is so hot.
That's hot.
So hot.
That's
Oh my god.
hot.
It's so
Oh
hot.
my God.
Quoth.
So hot.
Quoth, fuck me. Chronicler's got a real hard on for Quoth.
Yeah.
Scarper is a little bitch.
Scarpy?
Scarpy
Yeah.
sounds like a little bitch. Angels and demons and all kinds of fun stuff here.
Don't forget about the Chandrian.
The Chandrian. What is that? Is that like I know what a
You'll find
I
out
know
what
what a
the
Shandarian is.
You'll find out what
from One Piece. They're like winged people.
these are not winged people, but you'll find
Okay.
out what these are. This next chapter is only like 6 pages, so we might as well
What
burn through it.
what are those things called again?
Which one?
The Stig Eyes or the
What are they?
Scarper or
Like the Scare or something like that?
Scourge?
No.
No.
Something like that. I don't know.
Scree?
Scurry, something like that. Squirrel.
Squirrel.
Squirrel!
Squirrel.
Goddamn squirrel!
Squirrel.
Goddamn squirrel!
Squirrel. All right.
Chapter 7
All right.
of Beginnings and the Name of Things. Sunlight poured into the waystone. It was a cool, fresh light fitted for beginnings. It brushed past the miller as he set his water wheel turning for the day. It lit the forge the smith was rekindling after 4 days of cold metalwork. It touched draft horses hitched to wagons and sickle blades glittering sharp and ready at the beginning of an autumn day. Inside the waystone, the light fell across Chronicler's face and touched a beginning there, a blank page waiting the first words of a story. The light flowed across the bar, scattered 1,000 tiny rainbow beginnings from the colored bottles, and climbed the wall toward the sword, as if searching for one final beginning. But when the light touched the sword there were no beginnings to be seen. In fact, the light the sword reflected was dull, burnished, and ages old. Looking at it, Chronicler remembered that though it was the beginning of a day, it was also late autumn and growing colder. The sword shone with the knowledge that dawn was a small beginning compared to the ending of a season, the ending of a year. Chronicler pulled his eyes away from the sword, aware that Quoth had said something, but not knowing what. I beg your pardon? How do poor people normally go about relating their stories? Quoth asked. Chronicler shrugged. Most simply tell me what they remember. Later, I record events in the proper order, remove the unnecessary pieces, clarify, simplify, that sort of thing. Quoth frowned. I don't think that will do. Chronicler gave him a shy smile. Storytellers are always different. They prefer their stories be left alone, but they also prefer an attentive audience. I usually listen and record later. I have a nearly perfect memory. Nearly perfect doesn't quite suit me, Quoth pressed a finger against his lips. How fast can you write? Chronicler gave a knowing smile. Faster than a man can talk. Quoth raised an eyebrow. I'd like to see that. Chronicler opened a satchel. He brought out a stack of fine white paper and a bottle of ink. After arranging them carefully, he dipped a pen and looked expectantly at Quoth. Quoth sat forward in his chair and spoke quickly. I am, we are, she is, he was, they will be. Chronicler's pen danced and scratched down the page as Quoth watched it. I, Chronicler, do hereby avow that I can neither read nor write. Supine, irrelevant, jackdraw, quartz, lacquer, egoliant, lin la luz, lorschen hay. There was a young widow from Phaeton whose morals were hard as a rock. She went to confession for her true obsession. Quoth leaned forward to watch as Chronicler wrote. Interesting. Oh, you may stop. Chronicler smiled again and wiped his pen on a piece of cloth. The page in front of him held a single line of incomprehensible symbols. Some sort of cipher? Quoth wondered aloud. Very neatly done, too. I'll bet you don't spoil many pages. He turned the sheet to look at the writing more carefully. I never spoil pages, Chronicler said haughtily. Quoth nodded without looking up.
It's like one of the best words ever
What?
that isn't used enough in today's...
Haughtily?
Yeah, haughty people.
That's
People
haughty. It's haughty.
Haughty fuck.
What does...
Be more haughty, America.
America's pretty
Actually,
haughty.
don't. You're pretty haughty.
What does egoliant mean, Chronicler asked. Oh, nothing. I made it up. I wanted to see if an unfamiliar word would slow you down. He stretched and pulled his chair closer to Chronicler's. As soon as you show me how to read this, we can begin. Chronicler looked doubtful. It's a very complex... Seeing Quoth frown, he sighed. I'll try. Chronicler drew a deep breath and began to write a line of symbols as he spoke. There are around 50 different sounds we use to speak. I have given each of them a symbol consisting of 1 or 2 pen strokes. It's all sound. I could conceivably transcribe a language I don't even understand. He pointed. These are different vowel sounds. All vertical lines, Quoth said, looking intently at the page. Chronicler paused, thrown off his stride. Well, yes. The consonants would be horizontal then, and they would combine like this. Taking the pen, Quoth made a few marks of his own on the page. Clever. You'd never need more than 2 or 3 for a word. Chronicler watched Quoth quietly. Quoth didn't notice his attention on the paper. If this is am, then these must be the ah sounds. He motioned to the group of characters Chronicler had penned. Ah, a, ah, oo. That would make these the O's. Quoth nodded to himself and pressed the pen back into Chronicler's hand. Show me the consonants. Chronicler penned them down numbly, reciting the sounds as he wrote. After a moment, Quoth took the pen and completed the list himself, asking the dumbfounded Chronicler to correct him if he made a mistake. Chronicler watched and listened as Quoth completed the list. From beginning to end, the whole process took about 15 minutes.
I love it.
He made no mistakes. Wonderfully efficient system, Quoth said appreciatively. Very logical. Did you design it yourself? Chronicler took a long moment before he spoke, staring at the rows of characters on the page in front of Quoth. Finally, disregarding Quoth's question, Chronicler asked, Did you really learn Tima in a day? Quoth gave a faint smile and looked down at the table. That's an old story. I'd almost forgotten. It took a day and a half, actually. A day and a half with no sleep. Why do you ask? I heard about it at the university. I never really believed it. He looked down at the page of his cipher in Quoth's neat handwriting. All of it? Quoth looked puzzled. What? Did you learn the whole language? No, of course not, Quoth said rather testily. Only a portion of it. A large portion, to be sure, but I don't believe you can ever learn all of anything, let alone a language. Quoth rubbed his hands together. Now, are you ready? Chronicler shook his head as if to clear it, set out a new sheet of paper and nodded. Quoth held up a hand to keep Chronicler from writing and spoke. I've never told this story before, and I doubt I'll ever tell it again. Quoth leaned forward in his chair.
Said Jeffrey Epstein.
Before we begin, you must remember that I am of the Edema Ra. We were telling stories before Kalaptima burned, before there were books to write in, before there was music to play. When the first fire kindled, the Ra were spinning stories in the circle of its flickering light. The innkeeper nodded to the scribe. I know your reputation as a great collector of stories and a recorder of events. Quoth's eyes became hard as flint, sharp as broken glass. That said, do not presume to change a word of what I say. If I seem to wander, if I seem to stray, remember the true stories seldom take the straightest way. Chronicler nodded solemnly, trying to imagine the mind that could break apart his cipher in a piece of an hour. A mind that could learn a language in a day. Quoth gave a gentle smile and looked around the room as if fixing it in his memory. Chronicler dipped his pen, and Quoth looked down at his folded hands for as long as it takes to draw 3 deep breaths. Then he began to speak.
With a giant cock.
In some ways, it began when I heard her singing. Her voice twinning, mixing with my own. Her voice was like a portrait of her soul, wild as fire, sharp as shattered glass, sweet and clean as clover. Quoth shook his head. No, it began at the university. I went to learn magic of the sort they talk about in stories. Magic like Taborlin the Great. I wanted to learn the name of the wind. I wanted fire and lightning. I wanted answers to 10,000 questions and access to their archives. But what I found at the university was much different than a story, and I was much dismayed. But I expect the true beginning lies in what led me to the university. Unexpected fires at twilight. A man with eyes like ice at the bottom of a well. The smell of blood and burning hair. The Chandrian. He nodded to himself. Yes, I suppose that's where it all begins. This, in many ways, a story about the Chandrian. Quoth shook his head, as if to free himself from some dark thought. But I suppose I must go even further back than that. If this is to be something resembling my book of deeds, I can spare the time. It will be worth it if I am remembered. If not flatteringly, then at least with some small amount of accuracy. But what would my father say if he heard me telling a story this way? Begin at the beginning. Very well. If we are to have a telling, let's make it a proper one. Quoth sat forward in his chair. In the beginning, as far as I know, the world was spun out of the nameless void by Aleph, who gave everything a name, or depending on the version of the tale, found the names all things already possessed. Chronicler let slip a small laugh, though he did not look up from the page or pause in his writing. Quoth continued, smiling himself. I see you laugh. Very well. For simplicity's sake, let us assume I am the center of creation. In doing this, let us pass over innumerable boring stories, the rise and fall of empires, sagas of heroism, ballads of tragic love. Let us hurry forward to the only tale of any real importance, his smile broadened. Mine. My name is Quoth, pronounced nearly the same as Quoth. Names are important as they tell you a great deal about a person.
Wait.
Listen, it's Quoth is spelled Kvothe, but it's pronounced nearly the same thing as Quoth, which is Quothe.
Okay.
That's why it's Quoth.
Got it.
I can't say Quoth. It's not Quoth. It's basically Quoth.
Got it.
Yep. Okay. Names are important as they tell you a great deal about a person. I've had more names than anyone has a right to. The Adem called me Maedri, which, depending on how it's spoken, can mean the flame, the thunder, or the broken tree. The flame is obvious if you've ever seen me. I have red hair, bright. If I had been born a couple hundred years ago, I would probably have been burned as a demon. I keep it short, but it's unruly. When left to its own devices, it sticks up and makes me look as if I have been set on fire. The thunder I attribute to a strong baritone and a great deal of stage training at an early age. I've never thought of the broken tree as very significant, although in retrospect I suppose it could be considered at least partially prophetic.
Wait. Does that mean his dick doesn't work? Broken tree?
It's good. That's a good point. I'm not sure.
I don't think Quoth's dick works.
My first mentor called me Ilair because I was clever and I knew it. My first real lover called me Dulator because she knew the sound of it. Because she liked the sound of it. I have been called Shadakar, Lightfinger, and Six String.
I would go by Shattecar.
I have been called Quoth the Bloodless, Quoth the Arcane, and Quoth the King Killer. I have earned those names, bought and paid for them. But I was brought up as Quoth. My father once told me it meant to know. I have, of course, been called many other things, most of them uncouth, although very few were unearned. I have stolen princesses back from sleeping barrow kings. I burned down the town of Trebon. I have spent the night with Felurian and left with both my sanity and my life. I was expelled from the university at a younger age than most people are allowed in. I tread paths by moonlight that others fear to speak of during the day. I have talked to gods, loved women, and written songs that will make minstrels weep. You may have heard of me.
That's hard brags on a Trump level right there, Quoth.
Yeah, but these are true. These are things he actually did. It's not just some fucking bullshit narcissist shit that he made up.
Right?
I mean, this guy was
I
trying...
look great. I look great.
I look great. I look like the Lone Ranger.
I look great in my mask. I look like the Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
It doesn't muss my my orange makeup.
God, it's gotta ruin his fucking tanner.
I don't remember. I think it was Colbert.
Yeah.
Said that's why he didn't want to wear a
That's
mask
hysterical.
is because it would fuck with his mascara or whatever the fuck he wears.
His bronzer.
Bronzer.
Yeah.
Damn, dude. Okay, so Quoth's a badass, and they have like the university. So obviously he's not a god. Doesn't sound like he's like an actual god.
Not a god.
No.
Just
But he's different than a regular person. Like,
I mean,
he's not a human.
he is a human.
Bast isn't.
Bast, you'll find out, yes.
Bast is not a human.
Bast is not.
Hey, Bast is a human.
Yeah, you'll find that out, like...
Bast like an elf or something. I'm picking up some heavy elf vibes from Bast, because elves are always fucking supremacists.
they are elves.
Always elvish supremacists.
Elves are the white people.
Elves are the wasp.
Yeah, the
white
wasps.
people.
They're the conservative,
dwarves
fundamentalist Christian.
Dwarves are trailer park white people.
Yeah,
Like dwarves are the blue collar worker white people.
everyone knows the orcs are the black people.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
unfairly. Okay, we're not saying that's
Black
right.
Lives Matter.
We're not saying that's right.
Black lives
We're
do
just
matter.
saying that's what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically the way this goes now is him telling his story
Did you
to Chronicler.
Okay, so side tech. Did you see the movie Bright?
I did see the movie Bright. I actually really liked the movie
I
Bright.
really like the movie
Yeah.
Bright.
Yeah. Super good.
Great concept of like, okay, the world has evolved into 20 whatever.
Yeah.
With fucking fantasy people. Like,
Yeah. No, I loved that entire concept
Yeah.
of that.
That's a great concept. They set it up to do more.
Yeah. That reminded me, like, when that came out, do you know who Orson Scott Card is? Very, very well-known, like, sci-fi fantasy writer. He wrote Ender's Game, which is a very well-known fantasy book. From Ender's Game spawned, like, 2 separate series of books, which I read the one series, which is about Ender Wiggin going off into space and becoming, like, this speaker for the dead of the fucking population that he destroyed unknowingly. And then there's another one that takes place, which is like the wars that end up happening on Earth after Ender's Game. So he writes all kinds of different books, but there was a book he wrote, and I think it was called it was either called like Magic Street or The Street. I'm not sure, but what it is it's a modern interpretation of Shakespeare's Midsummer's Night Dream taking place in L.A.
What?
It's fucking fantastic. It is so good.
That's interesting.
And it's like it's the protagonist is a little, a teenage black kid in L.A. and like there's a like a warp between worlds and shit.
I love that.
Oh, it's like I would look it up on your...
What's it called again?
Look up Orson Scott Card. It's
Okay.
either called Magic Street or That Street. Actually, before I leave, I'll look up what the name of the book is and I'll send it to you so that you have it.
We'll put it in the comments. Definitely check. God, I can't ever remember the name of this fucking book. I love what's going on right now.
The Name of the Wind.
Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss.
Patrick Rothfuss. This is book 1 of the King Killer Chronicles.
Book 1.
And so basically, as you know now that it's him telling his story to a scribe,
Okay.
each book covers one day of him telling his story to the scribe.
So there's 3 books.
There's 3 books. There's only 2 that's written right now. 2 are out right now.
Okay.
Waiting on the 3rd one.
We're waiting on the 3rd.
Yep.
Dope. I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
So
I'm interested because it's like setting up a big world, the Shandian and all that shit. Like,
yeah. Well, you're gonna get introduced to the Chandrian here pretty quick.
Really?
Well, it's basically the beginning.
Chandrian?
Chandrian.
Chandrian?
CHANDRIAN. Chandrian.
Chandrian. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So you'll be introduced to them pretty quick, and you'll realize
Oh, it's a people. It's not like one person.
it's not one person. It's like a group.
Okay.
It's a small group of, and you're gonna figure out exactly.
What they are, yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty much like evil
They're
incarnate.
not good people.
Well, they're not people.
Well,
Yeah,
fair.
yeah.
I don't think Quoth's really a person.
From everything that I've read, he is.
He's not.
But he was raised. You'll find it. He was raised in extraordinary circumstances,
Doesn't matter.
Amongst extraordinary people, and was given a purpose in which he just pursued it. So,
A language in a day?
I mean, that's the thing is he's above average IQ for sure,
But still.
and
like,
abilities.
Yeah, he's like.
I mean, in like as of my information of what I have from reading these books and what I remember, he's 100% a human in this world. But something could happen in the 3rd
I
book
got
where
very
they were like,
big non-human vibes.
yeah,
Like not whole human.
I mean,
Already.
listen,
Jump Street.
Jump Street, 21
21, 22.
Jump Street.
22 Jump Street.
Yeah, fuck yeah,
Fuck it. We're going up a notch.
we're going all the way.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, White Claw. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Claw.
you.
Thank you, Patrick Rothfuss. I
Yep.
want to say thank you to Apple iPhone. I love your products.
If you want to listen to someone not hammered read this book to you, go to Audible because they got that shit.
I'm not hammered.
I am. And
I'm not hammered at all. I thought I read
well,
just
I
fine.
mean, I feel like I really tanked the blood alcohol level of this whole show. So
I mean, I feel like I have a lot more blood than you do. I'm a little bit bigger.
not that much. All right, we love you, everyone. Thank you.
Justice.
Yeah.
Justice.
Mean Swept! Motherfucking Mean Swept! Mean Swept!